Alright, hello everyone, and thank you for joining me for the fifth and final game for the Charlotte Classic tournament that I played in over this last weekend. I had the black pieces. I had black 3 out of the 5 games, and my opponent started with d4, and this is actually one of my opponents that I played in the Blitz, and I beat him there. I found that his playstyle in Classical was completely different than his playstyle in the Blitz. That and his time control was very different, because in the Blitz, I was up 2.5 minutes to like his 30 seconds, and I didn't end up winning by flagging, but he just had so little time on his clock in the Blitz that he, just made a bad move in the end and blundered, and I was able to convert it. But, yeah, he played much differently this game. I was actually the one that was under time pressure the majority of this game. Well, all of this game, really. So yeah, let me show you guys this game. I was pretty happy with it, and it was quite stressful, but it was my last game, so I knew that I could just pour out the remainder of my energy into this game. But d4, b6, we have c4, bishop to b7, knight to c3, e6. So these moves are still the same, but obviously we're no longer trying to plant a knight on f6 right in this variation. We get e4 played. Bishop goes on to c3. He plays bishop to d3, and now I correctly play f5. In the previous game it was not correct, but in this game this is definitely playable. So takes, queen 4 check, blocks, pawn takes, and then I just go here. There's something that I survive with in here, and I don't remember the exact variation right now, but I knew that this setup was fine if you were to take right here, if you didn't think ahead. But a lot of people don't make those risky moves when it comes to Classical. If they don't know the variation, they normally don't take the bait, kind of like a gambit. Instead, he just goes with more defense. So I support with a knight. Again, same thing, can't push, can't take. And he goes here. So now I found a tactic to win a pawn. So I went through with the tactic. We first take the knight, which is the defender of the pawn. Then I take one pawn, and he goes back. But the idea is that if he captures in either way, and we continue like this captured chain, that at the end of it, my queen is going to be able to hop to h4 with check, and then whether he blocks or moves away, there's no protecting that e4 square. So I was going to end up winning a pawn. So the reason for why he went bishop c2, which seems kind of weird, right? It's like you have 3 ways of capturing this, why don't you just do that? Well, the idea here is that in order for me to win my second pawn, I have to take this way, which aids in his development. So really, he turns his blundered pawn into like a what would you call it? Like a gambit. And if you look at the computer here, all 3 of the recommended moves are not taking the extra pawn. They are just like continuing development. But I didn't do that. I took the pawn, which is actually slightly better for him, even though I'm a pawn up. So I go queen to e7, because I know that this move is coming, and that is then going to be hard to dodge. He plays a4. I played knight to c6, just to put a halt to that, if he ever tries to play a5. I didn't want to play a5 myself, just because it's kind of cementing my position like that. I'd rather be more fluid with the pawns than the knights, because the knights can always move back if I don't like where I place them. The pawns cannot move back if I don't like where I place them. He castled, and it seems like it's just castle, like simple exchanges, but I actually thought about this for a while, because both positions kind of look uncomfortable for me as black. So on this side of the board, he has an open file, if I were to castle this way, so he already has a open file. He has more pawns that are already pretty far pushed, so he can break through I wouldn't say easily, but he has the potential to break through. Whereas if we look on the other side, I have an immediate threat coming from him, which is bishop a3, targeting my queen and my rook. And I knew that he's also going to have threats on these pawns, because the only way I protect myself here is with d6, which weakens e6. He also has these bishops that are looking at me, and this knight that's looking at me. So both sides looked scary, but I saw like a physical variation for my kingside castle, where, even after this continuation, which did happen, I thought that I was completely okay. But I did miss a tactic, which you will see shortly. Queen moves to the side on d3. I played h6, and h6 was another big think move. Reason for that was that this knight is coming here to g5. That's why he connected these. And the idea is that he takes this piece, and if I recapture, obviously, you know, I'm either getting mated or just in a terrible position. So if he takes here and I don't recapture with the knight, then he's just going to take my knight, and, you know, same thing happens anyway. You know, there's no defending that. So I just wanted to prevent this knight from coming to g5. So what I did was played h6. You know, there's also the move g6, which the computer thinks is best, but I did not like g6 in the moment, because g6 still allows knight to g5, which in turn allows the rook to come here and threaten e6. And my queen can't even sidestep to f7, which I would like to do. I would have to go over to d7, which just doesn't look very comfortable for me. I wouldn't like that position, so I thought, here, I'll just stop the knight from even coming to this square, because it's annoying. So I played h6. My opponent played d5, so I had to go back with my knight to defend. He took, and this is where another one of my, I'd say my mistakes were. I could just recapture and be pretty happy with this position. His bishop's staring at nothing, he has doubled pawns, I'm a pawn up on this guy. My queen can soon sidestep, you know, this knight has no access. But I was too terrified of the possibilities that this knight had. You know, it's just been a minute since I've been talking about these, the last 3 moves, but in the game, it was probably the span of around like 40 minutes, you know, these last few moves, which is why I got in so much time trouble. And I spent so much time thinking about how dangerous this knight was, that even though now I effectively shut the knight down, I was so worried about it that I just exchanged him off. And now the position is more or less equal, whereas, you know, in the other circumstance, I just have a very strong bishop that will eventually come online. So not too happy with my decision there, and I also blundered this tactic. And the idea here is that he really wants this knight, but he's going to pretend to go for the rook. Because if he goes for the knight right away, I just have knight to g5, and if he takes, I take, recaptures, I recapture the rook, I'm up the exchange. So this doesn't work. So, since that doesn't work, he first moves the defender out of the way. Oh, that's a sneak peek at what I did. But first what he would do is move the defender out of the way, and then he would go bishop to f5. And then what would happen is if I try this move, he takes my queen, I take his queen, he gets a knight back. I don't get anything back. So I will be losing a knight. So I go with this move instead. And again, we already know what happens if he takes the queen here. Because if he takes the queen, then I take, and I'm going to win the exchange. So what he likely has to do is move his queen out of the way here, to not have a bad time. So I looked at each of his moves specifically. You know, knight covers those. Here I'm just taking with the queen. Here I'm just taking with the rook, we're okay. You know, here. I don't remember what I came up with these 2 moves. Maybe I didn't calculate those 4 moves. Oh no, I think what I calculated is I would just take the 2 rooks, and I would be pleased with that scenario. Actually, what happens if he goes here? Knight e6. Oh, so I guess I block? No, I go down the exchange though. I don't know. Maybe I forgot to review these moves. But I reviewed what I thought was all of the moves, and every square that the knight queen goes to, I thought that I'd be able to either get free from this pin, or I'd be able to exchange my queen for 2 rooks, which I was going to be content with. But he ended up taking on a8 instead. He didn't think about it too long, so maybe he could have found better. But that's when I took this rook. I have to, of course, and then I take the queen. And he does have the better position, you know, even though I'm a pawn up, because look at what his pieces are doing. And then look at where my pieces are stuck, right? My king is in danger of being checkmated. My rook is in the middle of nowhere. My pawn's being threatened. You know, it's just horrible. So I play c5, you know, to protect this pawn from the bishop and protect this pawn from the rook. He threatens my knight. I go back here. He gets his bishop out of no man's land because it was not doing anything there. And I try to kick his bishop so I could, start moving these pieces out. And the idea was that if he moved his bishop, like here for example, I can trade the rooks. Because if he were to take the pawn, then I have this check, and I pick up the bishop. But he actually found an annoying move to stay on this diagonal, which was bishop to b7. I had to move my king out of the way. Now he's threatening yet another pawn. And I can push this, but right now he actually has more support over that pawn than I do. And if I go here with my rook, then he's going to take this. So I found another tactic to kind of save me for a little bit longer. So I go here, he takes the pawn, and I go for this. So there's no defending this pawn, is the thing. This bishop would just get taken if it tries to defend it. No piece otherwise can get to it, so I still stay alive with a pawn advantage for now. So what he does is he attacks his second pawn, which unfortunately is a mistake. Because I take, and now if he were to take this, I'm picking up the bishop. So he can't actually take on b6. So instead what he has to do is he has to, excuse me, he has to move his king so that he doesn't get that fork, and then I pick up a second pawn. And this is actually crazy to me, because even though I'm 2 pawns up in an endgame, if you could see, this is favored for white, ever so slightly. And that's because the bishops are stronger, it's because my pieces are stuck on the back lines. So that's kind of why, it still favors him. He threatens my knight, I just go back. He starts moving his king around. I think he's trying to pressure the knight out of there, or at least go to support this pawn or something. So I just push. Now I have 2 connected passers, so I'm pretty happy. He threatens my knight, I go back. His king gets closer, so I start getting my pieces involved. He can take a bishop, and then I got rid of one of his bishops, so I'm happy. And I'm also threatening the other one right now. He chooses to save it. I go to c4, and he finds a tactic to actually win the pawn. Because now he's threatening this knight, which I can't defend twice. I can only defend it once, so I have to move it, which drops the pawn. But I got tempo with d5, so I was pretty happy with this. Because now I'm threatening another pawn. I feel like my knights are no longer, in each other's way, right? My pawn can freely push, the rook's behind it. I was pretty happy in this position. And he found this move, which is also very strong. And now what happens is that if I take, he's going to be taking here. And I have to take this exchange because otherwise my knight drops. So then, even though I'm a pawn up still, he has 2 bishops against my 2 knights. He's going to be able to hold that endgame. It's going to be a draw, but he's going to be able to hold it. So, I go here. And the reason for this move isn't that it's winning or anything, but I'm allowing his king to choose the next square. And what that does is I allow him the chance to make a mistake. For example, something like this would be a mistake. Something like this, I don't know if it's necessarily a mistake, but now I can start checking him. And we might have a checkmate tactic here somewhere. So I just want to see kind of where he would go, because knights can always move back and forth. There's no real scary threat in moving one. And he chooses to go to d3. So after calculating this move, I saw that it was a valid defense, but I still stay a pawn up, so I'm going to do that. And he actually makes a mistake here. He takes with the bishop instead of the rook. And the reason why that's a mistake is because I can attack it twice. And he can defend it. But by defending it, I end up 2 pawns up against just a bishop. And the computer doesn't even say that this is wildly winning for me. They say I'm up 1. Which I would hope that I was up 7 or something, with just 2 connected passed pawns in an endgame. But I guess I wasn't. I thought that I could always get to the promotion square because I have a knight. So even if he can guard it, which he can't, if I go h1, but I could always just maneuver my knight around until I have the correct check, right? So I'm never going to get zugzwanged or anything. He's never going to be able to just get stuck there. So I was confident on that aspect, but I still had to prove it. So I'm just going to show me shuffling the pieces around for a little bit. Here I had to move, because if I don't, then he just takes and I take back, and then the king can block. There's nothing I can do. So I have to keep this knight alive. Or if I don't leave the knight alive, if I do allow it to get traded, then I can't let the pawns be in the same line. I need them to be on different lines so I could always gain opposition with a pawn move. He goes king here, and I have to gain opposition, and then force him back with the knight. Now we're making progress again. Get a few more pawn moves with some checks. And then the game stops recording here. But I did continue with some more forcing moves. I'm not going to pretend I remember all of them, and I did end up stopping recording at some point. And the reason I stopped recording, even though I was not under time pressure, well, I was at like 23 minutes, and he was at like 30. But what he was doing is he stopped recording himself. And I knew that because I looked at his paper, and I was at like move 55, as you can see here, but he only had 51 moves written. And he was still like writing down moves at this point, like whether to like try to fool me or something. But he was hoping to get like some time on me and like grind this out by me having to write down moves, and he wasn't. But as soon as I saw that he fell behind like 4 moves, I was like, nah, we're not gonna record moves either. So generally you don't record moves, I think like 5 minutes below or something like that. There's like an official rule normally for it, but normally it's like 5 minutes. But he started doing this to me when I had like 20 minutes left. So he was just trying to like press my clock, really. So once I found that he was, not keeping up on his moves, I stopped as well. And he ended up resigning after my pawns went a few more squares. And then, I went 3 of 5 on the tournament. So not the worst showing. I wouldn't say that I made any like blunders in the way of like I should have known better. I think that all my blunders were mistakes that I make at my strongest point. So yeah, I know what to work on now. I will say that classical chess is actually a lot more different from online chess than I would have thought. Not only from like a strength perspective, but also from a just like a how to play perspective, because you may opt into some tactics in rapid or blitz games and think that they're fine or that you're able to crawl out. In classical, you have time to figure out whether or not that's actually true or not. So you can lose on just like one of those random tactics. But yeah, I was pretty happy with my performance. 3 of 5 in the classical, first place 5.5 out of 6 in the blitz. I am going to be going to another tournament in July. I'm going to restart the timer here. I'm going to bring it to the side so you can see. It says tournament tomorrow. It's not tomorrow. It's in like a month. But I'm going to update that so that we have another countdown towards the next tournament. I'm going to have all the vlogs being uploaded soon. My brother is going to come back from California, and he should be helping me to get those going. But I went to the tournament with 2 friends, for those of you who may know. So we have footage from us playing our games, getting food, playing like, hitting up the pool, the fitness center, a couple of fun things I think would make for a cool vlog, exploring the hotel. So that'll be dropping soon. And then, yeah, I'm going to start playing again shortly. We're going to start the speed run up again. Got to hit 2,000 for you guys. And yeah, hope you enjoyed. Have a good one.